It is tax day 4/15/2014. After the show, I will be writing a check, begrudgingly, block letters, perhaps with hidden obscenities, mailing it off to the post office to the federal government. More than I want to pay for God knows what I get back. I get to subsidize plays about global warming and all sorts of other garbage. But there are a million taxes in the tax code, if not more. And to navigate it all, you need an accountant, you need a tax program, you need something. You need a damn miracle. You need Moses to come out and part this thing like the Red Sea. And joining us to talk about the tax code as it is, the tax code as the president would like it to be, including the proposed tax hikes that he's offered since joining his office, is Mattie Duppler. She's the Director of Budget and Regulatory Policy at Americans for Tax Reform. She also serves as the Executive Director of the Cost of the Government Center. Mattie, how are you today?
Hey, Derek, I'm doing okay. A little depressed with both this weather and the fact that we're all writing checks to the government today, but we'll get through it.
Yeah, I know. Those people who are like, I did my taxes right away, you know they're getting a refund. They're getting a refund.
Yeah, they've been giving the government an interest-free loan for too many months out of the year.
Exactly. Whereas I'm not about to do that, so I'm going to hold off on that. But when you look at the tax code as it is, does anybody actually know how big the tax code is? Because, you could submit the same information to 4 different accountants, and they would come up with 4 different results for what you owe or what you are owed back.
Absolutely, and that is part of the problem, right? And that's why at Americans for Tax Reform, we're always talking about trying to get the tax code simpler. And you've seen that over the last couple of months, even the last couple of years, politicians making overtures to the notion that we need to cut down our tax code, get rid of some of this regulatory red tape. But of course, every idea that comes out of Washington, especially from the left, complicates matters further by, increasing more tax incentives and more disruptions to the free market to push a certain agenda, to keep the tax code unfair in a lot of different ways, whether it be by rates or by different deductions and credits. And this is something that, we've been following for a while. And you mentioned before talking about the president and how many tax hikes he's both written into law and proposed. We calculated how many tax hikes he's proposed in all of his budgets since he's become president. And President Obama has been looking to increase taxes 442 times if all of his budgets had been passed over the past couple of years, which is just incredible. You can't have someone saying they want fairness and simplification in the tax code when they have that many tax increases on their agenda.
Well, you can if you know full well that nobody in the media is ever going to fact check that. And that's why ATR is so great. But when you look at those 442, in addition to everything else, the credits you get for acting a certain way, essentially the tax code is a monster that is in many ways designed to control people's behavior, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you see this all the time, especially with the rise of a lot of excise taxes, most particularly at the state level. A lot of politicians want to moralize through the tax code. They want to influence behavior through your wallet, and that's a very effective way to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got politicians who, if they're going to take more of your money for doing a certain thing, human beings are rational, risk-averse people. They're not going to do those things anymore. The problem is, we see this with the federal tax code, when politicians are trying to do this to income. This discourages work. This discourages growth. It discourages job creation, the way our tax code is set up. And for some reason, guys who are always looking to hike the tax rate on the higher income earners don't seem to connect these dots. They're the same guys who want to tax cigarettes, soda, distilled spirits, what have you, because they want to discourage their consumption, but then think it doesn't work the same way when you do it to income, and they're wrong.
Well, you had an example, and we're talking with Mattie Duppler from Americans for Tax Reform. You saw an example 2 weeks ago when the CEO of Caterpillar was dragged up to Capitol Hill in the United States Senate. Carl Levin sitting there with his glasses on the very tip of his nose, which is a skill in and of itself, how far he gets those suckers down there. But they were lambasting and attacking Caterpillar for dodging $200 billion worth of taxes or whatever by keeping money overseas, keeping money in Switzerland. First of all, Switzerland's a socialist country that we have a higher tax rate that's advantageous from a tax perspective to keep your money there is a commentary into itself. But the people who were attacking Caterpillar for working legally within the tax code are the people who wrote the tax code themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And therein lies the problem. The thing with Caterpillar, with all of these companies, that they are just acting rationally. They're acting to preserve their profits so they can keep what jobs they do have here in the United States. We've got the highest corporate tax rate in the developed world. And anyone who tells you it doesn't discourage investment here doesn't know what they're talking about. It's evident that is the case, and you're correct. You're absolutely correct. The fact that we've got politicians who refuse to do anything about this, refuse to look at the corporate income tax rate and try to bring it down, they're guilty of this. They can blame themselves, not Caterpillar.
Well, they don't understand that if you look at Walmart, the hated Walmart, because they employ a whole bunch of people in ways that the left doesn't like. But if you look at Walmart, they are paying their taxes. They're providing jobs. They have the ability to avoid the tax code because of all the favors that politicians have put in for their other cronies. If we had just a flat tax rate, it would be very simple. Then, of course, there wouldn't be accountants. So the accountant, who is all lobbying against simplifying the tax code? I imagine the TurboTax people are, the accountants lobby, everybody who gets a special break. I mean, it's almost to the point that we're not going to be able to simplify the tax code because all the lobbyists and all the big money groups out there who wanted special treatment have gotten it.
Well, it goes the other way, too, though. You've got the IRS itself and a lot of people on the left who for years have said that they think we should nationalize tax preparation. They are the guys who said, listen, this is so complicated. We've made it so complicated. You should just turn the reins over to us. You should allow the IRS to be your tax preparer as well, which clearly is a huge conflict of interest, right? These are the guys who are telling you what taxes you owe are also going to be the guys who are in charge of adjudicating your tax
bill.
Well,
there's a story on Huffington Post today. TurboTax fights to keep the tax filing harder than necessary. And it talks about, it's not about the complexity of the tax code. It's about the fight against the federal government essentially sending you IRS forms and saying, this is what we figure you made, this is what we figure you can, and it's all done, you can just sign it or you do your own taxes. Because they know that a lot of people who get that in the mail will just go, well, that looks pretty good, I'll sign it, and they won't be maximizing their deductions, and the government therefore gets more money.
Oh, absolutely. Simpler, flatter, fairer. These are things that we work for to change the tax code. Having the government tell you what your tax liability is does not do any of those things. All it does is exacerbate the situation now, which is that we've got a government that uses the tax code to grow the size of government and to grow its own strength and its own regulatory ability and to influence Americans' lives and to try and intrude into the free market even more.
I'm talking with Mattie Duppler of Americans for Tax Reform.